All right, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be learning how to write a WRA2. So the second of the WRAs that you're going to be learning in grade 10, you'll also use the same format in grade 11 and 12. Now there's three WRAs, the third of which you will not learn until grade 12, so you don't have to worry about that for a while. The WRA2 is a little more important though. So this is what your final exam in grade 10 and 11 is going to have, not a WRA1. So in grade 10 and 11, you're going to be writing a WRA2, and it is a little bit more difficult. It's not hard though, so let's get into it. So this is the sort of thing that should take you somewhere around 45 to 50 minutes to complete. So the diploma that you'll write in grade 12 will comprise of a multiple choice as well as a written section. The written section will have three components to it, which includes a WRA 1, 2, and 3. That might seem a little intimidating that in grade 12 you have to do all three, but you'll be fine. Couple general notes to get you started. Now, this is going to be very similar to when we learned how to write a WRA1. Use your voice. So when people are marking your WRAs, they're looking for ways to increase your mark. This can be done by including your own experiences or your opinion. It's nice that we want to hear your opinion, so provide it. If you've experienced something that the source is talking about, include that. If you're going to drop a key term, provide a definition. That's key here. Show that you know what you're talking about. If you use a term like assimilation, explain it. Use provided checklists to make sure you're on the right track. Want to increase your mark? Make sure you elaborate and explain. So I've said this before in class. If you see E-E like this, that means you have not explained enough. Essentially, it's like saying colonialism was bad and you just leave it there. Well, why? Tell me, explain. These are things you need to be doing. So the goal of 10-2 social, to be able to properly analyze a political cartoon, to be able to connect political cartoons to globalization, and then write a WRA1 and WRA2. Now, if you remember the WRA1, it had a little bit different of a format. We had a question, so the question's here, and we had a bit of a mind or a word web, and you had to pick which ones were right, which ones were wrong, and you explained why they were right or wrong. This one's going to be a little bit different. So let's get into it. WRA2. Now this consists of two questions in which you're asked to look at three different visual sources. So I want you to be going along and underlining some of these things. Two questions, three different sources. This is a big star here. You must answer both questions. Failure to do so is going to be significant. Now, this is a 4-paragraph assignment. Paragraphs 1 to 3 are question 1. Paragraph 4, question 2. Now, over here, let's just show you a little bit of what that looks like. Actually, on the left side, we have a WRA1. We had an intro. We had term 1, term 2, term 3, and a conclusion. This is a different format. There is no intro in a WRA2, so scrap that off. The way this works is you're doing 3 different source analyses. So paragraph 1 is source 1. Paragraph 2, source 2. Paragraph 3, please tell me you can guess what this one's going to be. Source 3. Now, these 3 paragraphs are question 1. That'll make more sense in a few minutes. So let's just take a bit of time, understand the format. So where is paragraph 4 going to be? This is question 2. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to show you here where all these stars are. If you do not do paragraph 4, you will get a 0 on the whole assignment. So please take a second and confirm with yourself what you think the most important paragraph is. Okay, your answer should be paragraph 4. I want you to write this down, what the format is. I'm going to erase this and I'm going to keep talking. So, you're answering both questions. For you in grade 10, the first question is going to be asking how the sources relate to globalization. Maybe historical globalization, maybe economic. But you're going to be getting one of those questions. The second one's going to be asking you for your opinion. So they're very different. It's 1 paragraph per source. Now let's get into, though, how you write one of these. We've analyzed political cartoons before in class, so this is not new. Now, you start with explicit message. This is what you see. Now we're going to do a bit of an example together, but you begin with what you see. That's supposed to be an eyeball. It kind of looks like a spider. But you should have a couple sentences saying what is obvious. If there's a picture of, I don't know, somebody, well, I'll show you a cartoon, somebody pulling on the continent of Africa, that's obvious. You're not looking at a message there. So this is just literally what you see. Maybe it's words like a label. Maybe it's a face. Maybe it's specific clothing to let you know that the person belongs to a specific culture. That's the beginning, though. The second is what we call the implicit or the message. Now, it says here what is happening in the source and why. Essentially, what does it mean? Right? The whole point of analyzing a source is that we're getting to the bottom of what the source is supposed to say. Number 3, answer the question on how the role of globalization is seen in the source. If this is social 20, that would be nationalism. State the role. So what type of globalization is seen? How do you know this? And then this is optional here. Bring in devices seen. This will increase your grade. If you can say that the source is satirical, so it's making fun of something, or it's ironic, if you can say stuff like this, the marker's going to be impressed because you're showing a deeper understanding of what the source is. Now, let's take another step back and look at this whole paragraph then. Because one thing to remember, paragraph 1, 2, and 3, you do these exact same steps. So like it says here, 1 paragraph per source. So these steps for all 3 sources. That's key. Now, part of this too is that I want you to remember a source analysis. What you're doing is you're showing that you understand what the source is saying. If this is a political cartoon, what is the cartoon supposed to mean? So when you're doing paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, it's not what you think. What does the author of the source think? So what does the author think? This is the question I want you answering, because this shows that you are analyzing correctly. So you do this for paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. And again, it's key that you answer the question on how the role of globalization is seen in the source. Whoop. Paragraph 4. This is answering question 2. Oh, that's messy. Let's erase some of this. Question 2 is going to be asking you what you think the role of globalization should be. Now, depending on the unit you're in, the question's going to look different. Just like if you're in grade 11, it's going to be asking you what you think about the role of nationalism. So, this is where you get to bring in your opinion. One thing to remember, though, is that your opinion is always going to be stronger if you're backing it up. So, if you can explain why you think a certain way, well, it's going to make the author believe you more. It's kind of like if you just say, I think so and so is dumb, and I say why, and you say, I don't know, I'm going to say, you don't have a good opinion there. Elaborate. So, I missed some stuff erasing here. Bear with me. Now, state your opinion on a topic and why. I believe the role of fill in the blank, so globalization, is and because. Now, one thing you do here is you're proving your stance by using the information you presented in the first 3 paragraphs. So those 3 paragraphs that you've written before writing the 4th, it has information you can use. You could say, I believe the role of globalization should be fill in the blank. This is similar to source 1. So you can say, I agree with source blank the most because. I disagree with source blank the most because. The key, though, right here is the word because. That's the elaborating and explaining. Say why. You can bring in your own political beliefs here. So using words like I value, I believe, my perspective. If you can bring in an example, either from class, from your life, or current events, if you can bring in an example or a case study to support your stance, it's going to look good. One more time, I want to emphasize the 2 points with all the stars. So, if you do not do paragraph 4, the marker will not even mark your WRA. So you have question 1 and question 2. On your rubric, actually, let's take a quick look at the rubric. Here you'll see what you're being marked on. So it's out of 25. The first 10 marks is on your interpretation of the sources. It's not 10 marks per source. It's 10 marks for all three. So you might bomb one source and do really good on the other two, and maybe you'll end up with a proficient. Or you might only analyze one source. Well, that's not going to be very good. But 10 marks is for that first question. So for your first 3 paragraphs, you get 10 marks. And then question 2, another 10 marks. Again, you should be able to be figuring this out at this point. Your most important paragraph is number 4. One paragraph is 10 marks on its own. Paragraphs 1 to 3 are also 10 marks. So paragraph 4 is the one you need to be spending, I'd say, a good chunk of time on. There's also 5 marks for communication. Now, communication I like to talk about for a bit because I have all sorts of things that make me tick. Things that I'm going to see every single time. Capital letters. Let's say you have a proper noun, like a name, like Canada. You need to have a capital C. This would be the same if you wrote something like the language French or the Congo. You need to make sure you're capitalizing correct things. Punctuation. Use periods, commas. Please don't have run-on sentences. 2, 2, 2. This is a number. This is similar to also. This one, like a direction. So we also have there, and there. This is they are. This, there. That looks awkward, but this is a direction. And this one belongs to a person. All right. So 4 paragraphs. Now, let's do a practice. This is what it would look like. So this is what Unit 2.1 would look like. What do each of the sources presented communicate to you about the role of globalization in history? And considering the sources presented, what do you think should be the role of globalization in history? So for paragraphs 1, 2, 3, you're answering this question. Paragraph 4, this one. What do you think should be the role of globalization in history? So you're looking for, like, what was good about what happened? What was bad? What would have been a better way of going about it? So I want to actually go through this first source here and show you a little bit about how you would analyze. Now, this is a practice. This is not on your WRA. Let's talk about explicit information. What do we see? What is obvious? So explicit. And I would recommend doing some planning. Right off the bat, we have the continent of Africa. So we know that we have Africa. One thing to keep in mind here, continent, not a country. I will dock you marks if you say Africa is a country. This is explicit. Now, what's happening to it? Well, let's actually look right here. We have a title, The Mad Scramble for Africa. So we have a title. Now, you should know what that title means, but that's implicit information. What else do we have? We have 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different people. And what are they doing? So there's people pulling or tugging on Africa, the continent. Now, what's different about these people? Well, they each have a label. France, Belgium, Holland, Great Britain, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Spain. So we know that each one of these people represents a different European country. These were all countries that colonized Africa. But that's implicit. So for our implicit, let's do that on this side. This would be stuff like, well, we know the mad scramble for Africa, that came out of the Berlin Conference. 1884. This led to imperialism or colonialism. What we can see is that 8 different European countries scrambled to get a piece of Africa. They imperialized it. If you remember from class, only 2 countries were not colonized. Now, why did European countries want colonies? This is what you're explaining here. They got raw materials, resources. They shipped those back to the mother country where they turned them into finished goods by manufacturing them. And then they sold them back to the colonies. So this also has remnants of mercantilism. Now, this is part of the implicit. What you then need to say is, what's the role of globalization here? Well, you have cultural contact. Colonialism is direct control by another country. So these are some of the things you want to be bringing in. You're doing this for 3 sources. Now, I am going to share with you another document. This one is a Social 30 WRA2. So you're going to look at these sources, source 1, source 2, and source 3. And there's an example of a proficient. I'm not going to go over this. I'm going to let you read that on your own. Let's go back to here, though, and do one. Actually, I'm going to go to this. Oh, look at that. I already have stuff written here for you. So you can read over this. I'll post this as well with you. Quick review. So, how many paragraphs is a WRA2? 4. So I'm going to put number 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't like that icon. I'm going to use this one. Paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. That's a big width. Let's go all the way down. Question 1. What do you do here? You start with explicit. So what you see. Again, I'm going to draw some sort of eyeball. So this should be 1 to 2 sentences. Next, we have the implicit. So this is the message. What does the whole thing mean? What is the author saying? Or the author's opinion? Explain and elaborate. The explicit lets you know what the implicit message is. Paragraph 4, question 2. This one is your opinion. Now these 3, question 1, 10 marks. This one, 10 marks. If you do not do question 4, you get a 0 on the whole assignment. So, go over this. Take your time. The whole thing should be about a page and a half long. Remember, the first 3 paragraphs, you're explaining what the source thinks. Paragraph 4, how do you think things should have been? Make sure you read over all of these carefully. This is all going to be posted for you. Have fun.